Hey, ignited minds, let's go. No warm-up, no small talk. I'm going straight at you because what I'm about to say matters, and if you've been struggling to focus, if you sit down to work and 20 minutes later you're watching videos about penguins you didn't even search for, you need to hear this today. You are not broken. You are not weak. You don't have a short attention span. You're not just like that. What you have is an untrained muscle being asked to lift weight it was never prepared for, in a world specifically engineered to make that lift impossible. Think about that for a second. The apps you open every morning were designed by teams of engineers, psychologists, and behavioral scientists whose entire job was to make sure you cannot put them down. They get paid based on how many seconds of your attention they can capture, and they are very, very good at it. Now, you're going up against that, with willpower alone. No wonder it feels like losing. But here's what changes everything, and I mean this. Focus is a trainable skill, not a gift, not a personality trait you either got or didn't. A skill, and like every skill, it responds to the right principles applied with the right consistency. That's exactly what this video is. 6 principles. Not tips, not hacks. Principles. The kind that operates underneath the surface. The kind that doesn't just change what you do, they change how your brain works over time. I want you to think about someone you admire, someone who seems to just get things done, someone who produces, creates, builds, while everyone else is still scrolling and getting ready. Do you think they were born with some magical focus gene? Absolutely not. What they have is a different relationship with their attention. They learned, maybe accidentally, maybe deliberately, to direct it, to protect it, to use it like a tool. That's the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Not intelligence, not talent, not luck. Just attention, aimed correctly, consistently. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't writing that for applause. He was writing it to remind himself, a man with every worldly distraction imaginable, wars to manage, an empire to run, a court full of people competing for his attention, and still he had to fight every single day to guard his own mind. That tells you everything. If Marcus Aurelius needed this reminder, so do you. So do I. We're going to talk about why your brain keeps pulling away from what matters, why everything you've tried before may have been the wrong tool for the right problem, and what to do instead, starting today, not next Monday, not after you get ready. 6 principles, each one will hit differently. I promise you, by the time we reach the end, you will look at your attention in a completely new way. Before we go any further, smash that like button right now. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Share this with one person in your life who checks their phone every 4 minutes. Leave a comment and do not skip any part of this video. Before we go any further, type this in the comments and claim it as yours. My attention, my power, my choice. Number 1. Your brain is not the enemy, your environment is. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you sat down to work and your phone stayed silent, in another room, for the entire session? Not minimized, not on vibrate. Actually, somewhere else. If that felt uncomfortable to even imagine, that discomfort, that's data. Here's what's really going on inside your skull. Your brain has an alerting system. Scientists sometimes call it the salience network. It was forged over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Its job is to notice change, movement, novelty, potential threat, potential reward. It's incredibly fast, deeply automatic, and it operates below your conscious awareness. Every notification sound, every red badge on an app, every scroll that loads something new, these are all lighting up that ancient system. Your brain isn't misbehaving when it gets pulled away. It's doing precisely what it evolved to do. The mismatch is that this system was built for a savanna, not a smartphone. Dr. Gloria Mark at UC Irvine spent years studying workplace interruptions. What she found was stark. After a single interruption, the average person takes more than 23 minutes to return to their original level of focus with the task they were doing. 23 minutes for one ping. Now multiply that across your actual day. Let's say you get interrupted just 6 times in a workday, which is honestly a low estimate. That's potentially 2.5 hours of fractured, low-quality attention. 2.5 hours you worked but didn't really work. 2.5 hours you were present but not there. And at the end of the day, you can't figure out why you feel exhausted but haven't moved anything forward. Now you know why. This is not a character flaw. This is a design problem. And the moment you see it as a design problem, you stop beating yourself up and start solving it instead. That shift alone, from self-blame to strategy, is where real change begins. Here's the part people overlook. Proximity matters even when the phone is silent. Research out of the University of Texas found that just having your smartphone sitting on your desk, even face down, even turned off, measurably reduces your available cognitive capacity. Your brain is partly occupied just by knowing it's there. It's spending background energy resisting the urge to check it, even when you don't feel like you're thinking about it at all. The phone in the other room isn't just a physical move, it's a neurological one. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Lincoln's principle applies here directly. Before you sit down to focus, your first job is to sharpen the environment. Remove what pulls. Reduce the friction between you and the work. Increase the friction between you and the distractions. Here are concrete moves. Put your phone in a different room. Not just flipped over. A different room. Close every browser tab that isn't directly related to what you're doing. If you work from home, communicate to the people around you that a certain window of time is not interruptible. Use website blockers during focused sessions. Turn off every notification. Not just silence them. Turn them off entirely. Think about it this way. A surgeon doesn't walk into an operating room and just hope the environment cooperates. The room is sterile. The tools are arranged. Every unnecessary variable has been controlled before the procedure begins. The surgeon's only job in that room is the surgery. That level of environmental intentionality is exactly what your focused work deserves. Your work matters. Treat the space where you do it like it does. This isn't about becoming someone who lives in a bunker. It's about accepting one honest truth. Your environment is constantly making decisions for you. The question is whether those decisions are ones you'd actually choose, or ones that were made for you by someone whose entire business model depends on your distraction. Design your space before your space designs your results. If you're ready to take control of your space, drop this below and mean it. Better environment, sharper focus. Number 2. The multitasking lies that's silently draining you. Here's something that should make you angry. For years, maybe decades, multitasking was sold as a superpower. Do more at once. Handle everything simultaneously. The more you juggle, the more impressive you are. It showed up in job descriptions, performance reviews, hustle culture content everywhere. It was a lie, a well-marketed, deeply damaging lie. Your brain does not multitask, period. What it does is switch, rapidly, repeatedly between tasks. Each switch has a cost. Researchers call it switch cost. That's the cognitive overhead of disengaging from one context and re-engaging with another. That cost is not zero. Studies at the University of Michigan estimated it can add up to 40% more time to complete a set of tasks when you're switching between them versus doing each one straight through. 40%. That's not a rounding error. If you work 8 hours and you're multitasking throughout, you may be getting 5 hours of real output while feeling like you worked 8, and wondering why you're exhausted and behind. Always behind. There's something even harder to hear. People who multitask the most tend to be the worst at it, and tend to rate themselves as the best at it. The more you split your attention habitually, the harder it becomes to filter out irrelevance, to hold complex thoughts, to go deep on anything. You get fast at skimming the surface. You lose the capacity for depth, and depth, the ability to think hard about hard things for extended periods, is where all the real value gets created. Think about the work that has actually mattered in your life, the work you're proud of, the writing, the problem-solving, the creative thinking that produced something real. Was any of that done in 15-minute windows between notifications? Almost certainly not. It happened when you were locked in, when the rest of the world fell away, when it was just you and the work. That state doesn't happen by accident, and it cannot happen when your attention is fractured. Bruce Lee said it simply and directly. Concentration is the root of all the higher abilities in man. That word, root, not a helpful tool, root, meaning everything else grows from it or doesn't grow at all. Your creativity, your problem-solving, your emotional intelligence, your ability to learn and retain, all of it is downstream of your ability to concentrate. You can't optimize the branches if the root is starving. So, what do you actually do instead? You work in what I call singular focus windows. One task, one goal, one defined time block. Everything else is closed, not minimized. Closed. You make a conscious agreement with yourself. For the next 45 minutes, this is the only thing that exists. Start with 25 minutes, if that sounds impossible. Use a physical timer, not your phone timer. A physical one. When the timer goes off, take a real break. Not check Instagram quickly. Stand up, walk around, look out a window, drink some water. Let your brain decompress before you go again. Here's what will happen. The first few sessions will feel uncomfortable. Your brain will generate urgent-seeming thoughts. It will try to convince you that right now, during your focus block, is the critical moment to check your email or remember that thing you forgot. That urgency is manufactured. It's your conditioned brain protesting the change. Push through it. By the third or fourth session, something shifts. The work starts pulling you in rather than pushing you away. Ideas connect. Progress compounds. You finish a session and realize without checking your phone once that you moved something forward that actually matters. That feeling is addictive in the best possible way. The output you get from 90 minutes of single focus work will outperform what most people produce in a full distracted workday. Not because you worked harder, because you worked whole. If you're done splitting yourself in 100 directions, prove it right now. One thing, full fire. Number 3. Train the return. The discipline nobody talks about. Pay attention to this one, because this is the one that separates people who read productivity articles from people who actually change. Your mind will wander. I'm not asking you to stop that. Nobody stops that. The most focused people on earth, meditators with decades of practice, elite performers, surgeons mid-operation, they all experience mind-wandering. The brain drifts. That's not the problem. The problem, and the practice, is what happens next. Most people, when they notice their mind has drifted, do one of two things. They either chase the drift, follow that random thought about what they need to buy at the store, which leads to their phone, which leads to 10 other things, or they get frustrated with themselves, feel like they've failed, and lose more time to self-criticism than they lost to the original distraction. Both of those responses cost you badly. William James was the father of American psychology. He identified something over a century ago that still stands. He wrote that the ability to voluntarily bring back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. He wasn't saying don't wander. He was saying the practice is in the return. The faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. Read that again. He called it the root of character, not productivity, character, will. The deepest parts of who you are as a person appear to be shaped by this one simple, repeatable act, noticing you've drifted and choosing to come back. Each time your mind drifts and you notice it, without drama, without self-blame, and you bring it back to the work, that is a rep. That is literally your attention muscle contracting under load, and like every muscle, it gets stronger the more reps you give it. 10 returns in a session is 10 reps. 20 sessions over a month is hundreds of reps. Do you see what that compounds into? Harvard psychologists ran a study using an app that pinged thousands of participants at random moments throughout the day, asking 2 questions. What are you doing right now? And is your mind on it? The results were striking. People's minds were elsewhere about 47% of the time, nearly half of their waking hours, and mind-wandering, the data showed, was consistently associated with lower reported well-being, regardless of what activity the person was doing. Let that sit for a moment. It wasn't the difficult activities that made people unhappy. It wasn't boredom or stress or hard work. It was the absence of presence. The drift itself, regardless of where the mind went, correlated with feeling worse. Your attention quality shapes your life quality, not just your work output. Your actual lived experience, moment to moment, is colored by where your mind is. So, here's the practice. When you sit down to work, set an intention out loud. Say it. For the next 30 minutes, I am working on this. When you drift, and you will, you'll catch it. When you catch it, you don't judge it. You don't sigh. You don't start a mental monologue about how you always do this. You just come back. No speech, no spiral. One quiet redirect. That's it. That is the entire practice. It sounds almost insultingly simple, but try it for 30 consecutive days, and then tell me your mind works the same way it did before. I promise you it won't. Every time you came back after drifting, that was a win. Celebrate it right here. I drift. I return. I win. Number 4. Your body is the hardware your focus runs on. I'm going to say something that might sting a little. If you're sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night and wondering why you can't concentrate, that's the answer. Right there. That's the whole answer. Focus is not a purely mental experience. Your brain is a physical organ. It runs on blood sugar, on oxygen, on neurotransmitters that are synthesized during sleep and degraded by chronic stress. When the hardware is compromised, the software cannot run properly. No amount of intention or discipline overrides biology. Biology wins. Every time. Here's what's actually happening when you're sleep-deprived and trying to focus. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for attention, decision-making, and impulse control, starts going offline. Not dramatically. Subtly. Your reaction times slow. Your ability to filter irrelevant information weakens. Your tolerance for cognitive effort drops. You start gravitating toward easier tasks, shorter feedback loops, lower hanging fruit. And you don't even notice it happening because your ability to assess your own performance is also impaired. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker's research on sleep is some of the most important and most ignored work in modern science. His findings suggest that operating on 6 hours of sleep per night for 2 weeks produces cognitive impairment roughly comparable to going without sleep entirely for 48 hours. The part that should really hit you: the sleep-deprived subjects didn't know how impaired they were. They rated their own performance as fine. They were not fine. You may be operating at 60% capacity, calling it a focus problem, downloading productivity apps, buying planners, and what you actually need is 8 hours of sleep. That's it. That's the whole intervention. Epictetus said, "Take care of your body. It is the only place you have to live." A man who owned nothing, controlled nothing in his early life except his own mind and body, and he still understood this. He had every reason to neglect his physical self, to focus purely on mental and philosophical strength, and yet he knew. The body is not separate from the mind. It is the container the mind lives in. If Epictetus prioritized this with nothing to his name, you have no excuse to ignore it with everything available to you. Beyond sleep, there's movement. This one gets dismissed too quickly because it sounds like generic health advice. But the research on aerobic exercise and cognitive function is genuinely worth your attention. Regular physical activity appears to increase blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the region most responsible for sustained attention, impulse control, and executive decision-making. You literally think more clearly, more sharply, when your body is regularly in motion. Even a 20-minute walk before a focused work session may measurably improve the quality of your thinking during that session. Not after years of training. That session. That day. The effect is that immediate. And here's the one nobody wants to hear about. Stress. Chronic, unmanaged stress floods your system with cortisol, which directly impairs the prefrontal cortex's ability to function. When you are constantly stressed, constantly overextended, constantly running on empty, you are chemically undermining your own ability to focus. The hustle culture narrative of grinding harder through exhaustion is not just wrong. It is physiologically backwards. And nutrition. Your brain is roughly 2% of your body weight, but consumes about 20% of your caloric energy. It needs stable fuel, not spikes and crashes. Processed sugar creates exactly the kind of energy roller coaster that makes sustained attention nearly impossible. Real food, eaten at reasonable times with enough water. These aren't wellness trends, they're operating conditions for the organ you're trying to improve. Here's the hard truth nobody in the productivity space wants to say plainly. You can have the best systems in the world, the most carefully designed environment, the strongest intentions. And if you're chronically sleep-deprived, sedentary, and running on caffeine and stress, your focus ceiling is low, non-negotiably low. Protect the hardware. The software depends on it entirely. If you're finally going to start treating your body like the asset it is, say it loud. Strong body, locked mind. Number 5. Stop deciding in the moment. Preload your intentions. Here's a pattern I want you to recognize in yourself. You sit down in the morning. You have a vague sense of what you should be doing. But instead of going straight to that thing, you check email first, just to see if anything urgent came in. Then a message catches your eye. Then you respond. Then you look at what you were doing before the email. Then something else surfaces. 2 hours pass. You've been busy the entire time. You haven't moved anything forward that actually matters to you. Sound familiar? Most people would answer yes, and most people would blame themselves for lack of discipline or motivation. But that's the wrong diagnosis. This isn't a motivation problem, it's a decision architecture problem. When you sit down without a clear pre-made decision about what you're doing first, your brain defaults to whatever is easiest, most familiar, or most immediately rewarding. Email wins, notifications win, reactive tasks win. The things that actually matter, the deep, difficult, important work, get pushed to later. Later usually becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes the thing you're still not doing a year from now. There's a principle in behavioral research called decision fatigue. Your capacity to make high-quality decisions appears to diminish across the course of a day as you make more of them. Every time you decide what to work on next, you're spending cognitive energy that could have gone toward actually doing the work. By early afternoon, your brain is making lazier choices, defaulting to easier, lower-stakes tasks, without you even realizing it. The judge who makes parole decisions in the morning approves more requests than the same judge in the afternoon, not because the case is changed, because the brain changed. Your best decision-making window is your first 2 hours, and most people spend those hours clearing out their inbox. Peter Drucker spent his career watching how people and organizations actually used their time versus how they thought they did. He observed, "What gets scheduled gets done. What gets left open gets swallowed." The gap, he found, was almost always enormous. What looked like a busy, productive schedule was often a reactive maze. Responding, adjusting, putting out fires, filling the day with activity that felt important but moved nothing essential forward. The fix is to make the important decisions before the day starts, when your mind is fresh. Before the inbox opens, before anyone else's urgency has a chance to colonize your agenda. The night before, or first thing in the morning before you touch anything else, you identify the 1 to 3 things that genuinely matter today, not 10, not a full list. 1 to 3. Then you assign them to specific time blocks, and those blocks are treated like appointments you cannot cancel. Not, "I'll work on the proposal sometime this morning." Instead, you say, "I will work on the proposal from 8 to 9:30. Phone in the drawer. Email closed. Door shut. Nothing else." Specificity is everything here. A vague intention is a wish. A specific intention with a time, a place, and a protected environment is a commitment. And commitments made in advance, before the chaos starts, are exponentially more likely to be kept than decisions made on the fly when everything is competing for your attention. Add transition rituals. A consistent cue that tells your brain, focus time begins now. Make a specific drink. Clear your desk deliberately. Put on a specific instrumental playlist, or choose deliberate silence. The ritual itself is less important than the consistency of it. Over weeks and months, that cue becomes a trigger. Your brain begins associating it with the focused state. Getting into deep work stops being a battle and starts being a switch you flip. This is not about becoming rigid or robotic. Life interrupts. Real urgencies arise. Flexibility matters. But there is an enormous difference between a day that flexes around a clear intention and a day that never had one. One of those days ends with progress. The other ends with exhaustion and a vague sense of having been very busy while accomplishing very little. You deserve days that end with progress. Build them the night before. Tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, drop this in the comments and commit to it. I plan first. I win first. Number 6. Learn to sit in the fire. Boredom is where focus is forged. This is the one most people don't expect to be on this list, and it might be the most important principle of all 6. We have eliminated boredom from our lives almost completely. Think about every idle moment in your day. Waiting for coffee to brew, phone out, red light, podcast on, walking to the mailbox, earbuds in, lying in bed before sleep, screen on. We've filled every gap, every pause, every second of potential quiet. And we think it's harmless. Just filling dead time, right? Actually, it may be one of the most significant things quietly working against your ability to focus, and almost nobody is naming it for what it is. Here's the mechanism. Every time you reach for stimulation, the moment you feel unstimulated, you're training your brain to expect constant input. You're conditioning it to find the baseline, the normal, slow, unrewarding pace of real work, real thinking, real creative effort, unbearably dull. And then, when you sit down to do the hard thing, your brain fires resistance signals because the task isn't delivering dopamine fast enough to compete with everything else it's been conditioned to expect. You didn't develop a short attention span. You trained one by never practicing the alternative. Every time you chose stimulation over stillness, you reinforced the wiring. Day after day, week after week, until sitting quietly with one thing for 30 minutes feels almost physically uncomfortable. That discomfort is reversible. But you have to be willing to feel it first. Marcus Aurelius wrote something in Meditations that has stayed with thinkers for nearly 2,000 years. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." 2,000 years ago, no smartphones, no notification badges, no infinite scroll, no algorithm designed to hijack your dopamine system. And he still had to remind himself to go inward, to seek the quiet inside himself rather than the noise outside. That tells you something profound. The pull toward distraction is not a modern invention. It is a human condition. What's modern is just how aggressively it's been weaponized against you. The practice is uncomfortable but disarmingly simple. Deliberately allow yourself to be bored. Leave the podcast off on your morning walk. Just walk. Sit at your desk for 5 minutes before you start. No phone, no music, no input. Just let your mind settle like sediment in a glass of water. When you're waiting somewhere, wait. Don't fill it. Let the restlessness rise. Let it peak. And then, if you hold it long enough, watch it pass. That passing is what you're training for. The moment when the resistance fades and a quieter, more focused state begins to emerge. That state is where your best thinking lives. It doesn't show up on demand. You have to earn it by sitting through the discomfort that comes before it. What happens in those spaces isn't nothing. Research on what neuroscientists call the default mode network, which is the brain activity that occurs during rest and mind-wandering, suggests it's deeply connected to creative thinking, memory consolidation, and the integration of complex ideas. The brain during apparent stillness is not idle. It's sorting, connecting, building. Processing things it simply cannot process while you're actively feeding it content. Some of your best ideas will arrive not when you're grinding, but in the quiet moments after. There's also something important about what sustained boredom teaches you emotionally. It teaches you that discomfort doesn't have to be immediately escaped, that not every moment needs to be filled, that you are capable of being present with something slow and unrewarding long enough for it to become rewarding. That patience, real patience, is a form of strength. Deep focus requires exactly that. The capacity to stay with slow, unrewarding work long enough for the work to open up, for the insight to arrive, for the flow state to kick in. That capacity is built in the quiet, bit by bit, day by day, quiet walk by quiet walk. Almost no one is doing this right now. Almost everyone is running from stillness at full speed. That means the person who learns to sit in it, to hold it without flinching, without reaching, has access to a kind of focused depth that is genuinely, increasingly rare. That person can be you, starting the next time you feel the urge to reach for your phone and choose not to. This one's for the person who hasn't sat in silence in years. Type this and reclaim it. Silence is my strength. 6 principles. And here's what I want you to notice about all of them. None of them ask you to be superhuman. None of them require a perfect morning routine or unlimited willpower or a complete overhaul of your life starting tomorrow. Every single one of them works with how your brain actually functions, not against it. They respect your biology. They work inside the reality of a distracted world, rather than pretending that world doesn't exist. Principle 1. Your environment is a choice, one most people never consciously make. Start making it. Build a space that works for you, not against you, and watch what becomes possible when the friction of distraction is removed. Principle 2. The whole version of you, undivided, fully present, locked in, outperforms the split version every single time. Singular focus is not a limitation. It is the most powerful multiplier available to you. Principle 3. Your attention will drift. It always will. Stop treating that as failure. The return is the discipline. The return is the rep. Do it 1,000 times and watch what your mind becomes. Principle 4. Your body is not a vehicle for your brain. It is part of your brain. Sleep like your focus depends on it, because it does. Move your body, feed it real fuel, and protect it from chronic stress. The hardware sets the ceiling for everything else. Principle 5. Decisions made under pressure, in the middle of a chaotic day, are your weakest decisions. Preload your intentions before the noise starts, and you will stop spending your best hours on other people's emergencies. Principle 6. The one that quietly powers all the others. Make peace with stillness. Learn to be bored without escaping it. Sit in the discomfort long enough to come out the other side. Because deep focus, the kind that builds real things, lives in the space most people are too restless to enter. Here is what I know for certain. The person who masters their attention in this era, right now, in this specific moment of history, when attention has become the most contested resource on the planet, that person has an edge that compounds every single day, not because they're smarter, not because they work longer hours, but because when they show up for the work, they actually show up. All of them. Every time. That is rare. That is valuable. That is entirely learnable. You don't have to implement all 6 of these tomorrow. Pick the one that stung when you heard it. The one that felt uncomfortably accurate. Start there. Stay there for 2 weeks, genuinely, without perfection, but with intention. Then add the next one. Small. Consistent. Compounding. That is how mountains move. That is how people change. Not in one dramatic moment, but in the quiet accumulation of better choices, made one at a time. Now I want something from you. If one of these principles cracked something open, if something shifted in how you see your own attention, tell me which one in the comments. Tell me what it changed. I make this content for exactly that moment, and I want to know when it lands. Like this video. It takes 2 seconds, and it puts this in front of someone who needs it. Share it with someone who needs it. You already know exactly who in your life needs to hear this today. Subscribe to this channel because we go this deep every single time, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for watching all the way through. That sustained attention, right here, right now, is not nothing. It's proof. Proof of what you're capable of when you decide to be. Now go use it. I'll see you in the next one. You made it to the end. That focus right there, that's the whole point. Now seal it. Focused. Unstoppable. Now.